Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. The Democratic Republic of Congo's government on Tuesday banned an opposition protest planned for Wednesday over last week's chaotic national election, as early results showed President Felix Tshisekedi in the lead. A much-needed conversation on concerns over the mental health of international students studying at U.S. universities. And with new wars, growing hunger and poverty on a warming planet, the United Nations comes under increasing scrutiny. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The Democratic Republic of Congo's government on Tuesday banned an opposition protest planned for Wednesday over last week's chaotic national election, as early results showed President Felix Tshisekedi in the lead. 5 opposition candidates, presidential candidates, called the joint demonstration in the capital, Kinshasa, over alleged election fraud. The government said the demonstrations did not have a legal basis and aimed at undermining the electoral process. The results announced by Sheni so far account for nearly 1.9 million ballots out of a total of around 44 million registered voters in the vast Central African country of more than 100 million. Sheni said 60-year-old Tshisekedi, in power since 2019 and seeking a second 5-year term, was leading with more than 81% of the vote. Following was business magnate and former Katanga provincial governor Moise Katumbi with just over 15% of the vote, and ex-oil executive Martin Fayulu at just over 1%. The Sheni has set a December 31st deadline for the release of full provisional results. Armed groups have killed at least 160 people in central Nigeria in a series of attacks on villages, according to local government officials. The toll marked a sharp rise from the initial figure reported by the army Sunday evening of just 16 dead in a region plagued by several years of religious and ethnic tensions. Villagers packed their belongings and fled their homes in the Boko's local government area in Nigeria's Central Plateau state after the series of attacks. A provisional toll by the local Red Cross reported 104 deaths in 18 villages in the Boko's region. At least 50 people were also reported dead in several villages in the Barkin Ladi area, according to Dixon Chalom, a member of the state parliament. Amnesty International criticized the government in the wake of the attacks, saying the Nigerian authorities have been failing to end frequent deadly attacks on rural communities of Plateau State. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, Northwest and central Nigeria have been long terrorized by bandit militias operating from bases deep in forests and raiding villages to loot and kidnap residents for ransom. The United Nations says Malawi is home to tens of thousands of refugees fleeing conflict in Africa's Great Lakes region. However, human rights groups say some are being rounded up and moved against their will. Chimwemwe Padatha has more from Lilongwe, Malawi.
Tusaid Farini has been living in Malawi's Dzaleka refugee camp for 10 years after fleeing unrest in his home country, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Because I was working as a human rights defender, and in a country called the Democratic Republic of Congo, you can just see democracy is only through the name, but it's not in reality. So yeah, that's why we decided to leave the country.
The Dzaleka refugee camp, originally built to hold 12,000 people, is home to over 50,000 refugees and asylum seekers, mostly from the DRC, Burundi, and Rwanda. An estimated 8,000 have settled in the country's rural and urban areas, and most are well integrated into communities, the UN says. In March, Malawi ordered them to return to the camp, and in May, authorities forcibly relocated about 900 of these refugees to Dzaleka, an exercise human rights bodies say was a violation of their rights. Refugees say they were beaten and their children were exposed to harsh conditions, including imprisonment, during the forced relocation. Now, refugees and advocacy groups such as FGK Umuza Foundation and others sent a letter in October seeking recourse at the International Criminal Court, or ICC. Machona Piri is the liaison officer for Inua Advocacy.
As at 5th September of this year, we had submitted 36 cases to the ICC, and these cases included issues of gang rape, issues of extortion and bribery by suspected police officers.
The ICC has yet to respond to the October letter by the refugees and their representatives. In the meantime, the Malawi Human Rights Commission has asked law enforcement agencies to investigate the allegations, says Peter Chisi, the Commission's Director of Civil and Political Rights.
Law enforcement agencies have been accused of stealing money as well as property from the refugees. There have also been allegations of violations of children's rights, especially, for instance, where children were detained with adults in prison. There are also some allegations that some women have been sexually abused and so on and so forth.
Chisi said these abuses happened in May during the forced relocations. But Malawi Minister of Information Moses Kunkuyu says that the government imposed the relocation according to the law and is committed to protecting the rights of refugees and asylum seekers.
The process was communicated that we would want to make sure that in line with international protocols, those that are called refugees, they must really be accorded the status of refugee.
The African Commission on Human and People's Rights says Malawi has regressed in the protection of refugee rights since the government issued a similar 2021 directive for refugees residing outside Dzaleka camp. Chimwemwe Barata, VOA News, Lilongwe, Malawi.
Israeli forces bombarded Palestinian refugee camps in central Gaza and issued orders telling residents to evacuate the area Tuesday, signs that the military plans to expand its ground offensive into another section of the besieged territory. The opening of a potential new battle zone threatens to bring new destruction and displacement in a war that Israel has said will last for months as it vows to crush the ruling Hamas militant group despite international pressure for a ceasefire. And U.S. calls for a reduction in civilian casualties. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Monday that Israel is not stopping and, quote, "we will not stop until victory is won." Netanyahu issued the pledge during a speech before the Knesset, Israel's parliament, while families of the more than 100 Israeli hostages still held in Gaza held signs calling for Israel to reach a deal to bring them home immediately.
To you, IDF's military troops, and to the hurting families and relatives of the abductees, I say also on this stage, we are not stopping, and we will not stop until victory, because we have no other country, and we have no other way.
The Prime Minister also traveled to the northern Gaza Strip Monday to meet with the Israeli soldiers, where he assured them the war would continue until Hamas is defeated.
We must also make sure it never ever comes back, and that requires the thing each one of you is asking for, to just go on until the end. And I'm simply proud of your determination. It's not simple. On the other hand, it is simple. Simply go on until the end. And I salute you. Salute you like this. Thank you.
Egypt on Monday proposed a plan to end the current conflict with a ceasefire, a phased hostage release, and the formation of the Palestinian government of experts to administer the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, according to a senior Egyptian official and a European diplomat familiar with the proposal. Israel and Hamas were called to the initial proposal but stopped short of an outright rejection of the plan. A new report by the Integrated Phase Classification that analyzes data to determine the severity and magnitude of hunger crisis shows that at least 1 in 4 households in Gaza which is equivalent to more than 500,000 people, are facing catastrophic hunger conditions. According to Arif Hussein, the World Food Programme chief economist, the acute food insecurity are unprecedented in recent history and puts Gazans at a risk of famine.
What is happening in Gaza is unprecedented, both in terms of its scale, but also how quickly it is happening. You know, in the world right now, there are about 130,000 people who are in catastrophic levels of hunger, meaning they're starving. In Gaza, more than 500,000. That is 4 times more. And that is what makes this totally unprecedented. We can still avoid this famine, but we need to make sure that people have food, people have water, they have shelter, they have sanitation. And for all of those things to happen, we need border crossings open so these commodities can come in. And then we need to make sure that they could reach people, which means we need access pretty much everywhere throughout the Gaza Strip. And that is only possible if there is a humanitarian ceasefire.
That was Arif Hussein, the World Food Programme chief economist. Mental health is a big topic of discussion on U.S. college campuses, with universities continually reaching out to students to make sure they are okay. Many international students studying in the U.S. say the concern is novel but welcome. VOA's Laura Bowman has more.
Necessarily? Okay.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and are certain places good at that?
So we have a great forensic psychology program here.
Talking about mental health comes naturally to Alana Taylor, Senior Director of Student Wellbeing at Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia.
Mental health impacts really kind of everything that we do. College is a really challenging time for students. Lots of changes, just developmentally. Emerging adults are faced with a lot of issues related to identity. What kind of jobs do they want to have? What are they good at?
She says international students on campus have it particularly tough.
They're in the middle of 2 different cultures. I think they have their home culture and they're trying to navigate a new culture, which creates a lot of stress.
They also can face language barriers, financial stress, and homesickness. Marymount University freshman Anujan Chadmani is from Mongolia.
Like last week, I was kind of depressed because of homesick. And even though I'm adjusting here, there is something like a whole kind of thing, which like I miss my home and family.
She is signed up for a therapy session.
Well, I think mental health is important and well-being, but in my country, people didn't care about it, and here people cares about it. So it's also one of the biggest advantage of being here.
Marymount University freshman Ayush Patel of India says he's fine for now, but he welcomes the university's constant mental health outreach.
Mental health is the most important thing that individuals should have, because I was in depression and I didn't notice in my 12th grade. When I'm in US, I came to realize this thing.
Over the holidays, Patel says he'll get out and enjoy the Christmas cheer.
I'm gonna be around the Arlington and seeing the trees and jingle bells. Yeah, that's gonna be exciting.
Chadmani says socializing helps her feel better.
So being with the people is also one kind of medication.
University wellness experts are quick to say that international students studying in the U.S. are extremely resilient, which helps them deal with the everyday challenges of campus life. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, Arlington, Virginia.
Now, for more on mental health concerns for international students, I'm joined in studio by Nyaka Lagoke, a professor of African Studies at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Professor Nyaka, it's great to have you back on Africa 54.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning.
Let's address this issue because we've seen this rising in the campuses around the world, but here in the U.S., that has really come out, very strongly, as Laura Bowman said. What's your observation about the mental health issues when it comes to African students that are studying right here in the United States?
Yeah, it's a national crisis and the mental health issue in the United States across all the campuses. And I will not say that African students are affected more, but compared to others whose families are in the United States, they are homesick. They feel isolated. For some of the students with whom I spoke, the first year on campus, change of culture, they don't have any friends, they have a sense of isolation, and some of them are even depressed. And then with the COVID-19, that issue has affected even more African international students in the United States on campuses. And
very quickly, Professor, what should parents tell their children when they're sending them abroad? What are the precautionary things that they need to make sure these students are aware of? Because, like you said, the cultural differences and other issues arise.
Yeah, but I think the parents should be aware, and it's not, they don't, they may not know what is happening on campuses when it comes to that. The most important thing is to be aware and then suggest to the students, to the children, that, this is part of the issue, and then be educated, the parents themselves, and also somehow educate the children. And the children should be, because they will be living here, they should be more aware of that than the parents.
Well, much as they might be aware, how should they get help? Where should they look for help to be able to kind of stabilize their minds and understand they're in a different culture, they are facing different kinds of things, and we want them to be healthy, to be able to complete their studies? Yeah,
this is the responsibility of the universities. We know the mental health issue is a serious issue for all the students, but universities should cater in a particular way those international students because, like I said, they're homesick and they feel isolated in the first year, and with all the COVID and many other issues, they are more affected than those who have at least the presence of their respective families.
You mentioned COVID, and we saw a spike in mental health issues right after COVID pandemic hit, the world. How much of these mental health issues has to do with that COVID-19 pandemic?
COVID affected everyone, and sometimes, adults or professors, sometimes when students are talking about mental health issues, we don't always understand. We did not experience COVID when we were going to school. COVID destroyed many things in the society, the isolation processes, all of them, of course, affected more the students who are many of them are teenagers, first-year students, and then I think that COVID really changed the patterns, the behaviors, the reactions, the interaction among human beings. And then I think that we have not recovered yet from what COVID has done as effects on the communities in universities and everywhere.
What can you tell us from your own university experience with the students studying there? What kind of concerns did they raise during this period of time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was expecting that question. Yes, we had several meetings at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. And then I can say it, some of the professors seem not to be sensitive enough to the student position about mental health issues. And then was somehow under the leadership of the President, Dr. Brenda Allen, and then we had several meetings, and we understood that we have somehow to support the student in this difficult moment because even us, we've been affected. And then we can imagine how it can be more impactful on the students. So that's a conversation we had, and then we're doing something in order to try and cater to the needs of the student.
And when you say that, what exactly? Is it counseling? Is it seeing doctors? What happened to?
Yeah, so for instance, at Lincoln University, there is like a professors committee, and there are counselors and people who can be there for the student. At the same time, professors with students. We are having this conversation, and then we think that the most important thing to do before any other thing is to promote a sense of community, so that those who are adults in a leadership position can be there for the student who need to have a sense of belonging to a community that cares about them. So this is what we are doing under the leadership of Dr. Allen at Lincoln University.
Professor, thank you very much for your insight and all that information that we just had. Professor Nyaka Lagoke is with the African Studies at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, new wars, growing hunger, and poverty puts the United Nations under increasing scrutiny. We'll be right back.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, we speak with the creator of a unique documentary that sheds light on the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. VOA executive producer Omari Kaseko takes us to Goma in the eastern part of the country, where he documents the trials and tribulations of internally displaced refugees. Join me, Hayley Adams, for an intimate look at the silent war that has been going on for years on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, Ethiopia became Africa's third to default on its debt in as many years on Tuesday after it failed to make a $33 million coupon payment on its only international government bond. It was supposed to make the payment on December 11th, but had up to Tuesday to provide the money due to a 14-day grace period clause written into the $1 billion bond. Ethiopia has been under severe financial strain in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and a two-year civil war that ended in 2022. Libya's stock market resumed trading on Monday at a halt in the capital Tripoli after more than 9 years of closure because of the political and security situation. The stock market also has a trading halt in Libya's second city of Benghazi, where trading is expected to resume next week. And jailed Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko has submitted his candidacy to contest a February presidential election with the Constitutional Council, despite the state's refusal to provide him the necessary documents. Sonko's backup, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, has also filed to run, according to Ousseynou Lai, an official in their dissolved party PASTEF. Like other candidates, Sonko had until December 26 to submit his candidacy and show he had collected enough signatures. New wars and growing hunger and poverty on a warming planet, and little the United Nations can do to fix it. VOA correspondent Margaret Bishia looks at the UN's future in a world where its impact is shrinking.
In 2023, the war in Ukraine entered its second year, with no peace on the horizon. Military coups destabilized parts of Africa, and new and deadly wars arose in Sudan and the Middle East. The United Nations has had little success in stopping the bloodshed.
It's particularly been challenging because the kinds of conflicts the UN has been facing over the last year have been exactly the kinds of conflicts that the UN is least well equipped to manage. They're conflicts between the big permanent members of the Security Council. And when those countries are involved, the UN has the least scope for action.
That's because Britain, China, France, Russia, and the United States can use their vetoes to block sanctions and other tools the Council can use to maintain peace and security. This past year, geopolitical divisions intensified over Russia's war in Ukraine, and since October, Washington's support for Israel's war against Hamas.
And the mood in the Security Council now is poisonous.
The people of Gaza are looking into the abyss.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres was unable to unblock the paralysis by invoking in December the rarely used Article 99 of the UN Charter to press the Council for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. The United States vetoed his appeal, and Israel called for his resignation. The news wasn't much better for the UN's peacekeeping efforts in the field. The organization's Blue Helmets marked 75 years of peace operations this year. But the anniversary comes as Mali and the Democratic Republic of Congo demand that UN forces leave their territory, and as Haiti appeals for an international force to help stabilize the country, just not a UN one. In Africa, leaders are turning more to forces drawn from regional blocs to deal with sub-Saharan crises. This, along with peacekeeping's hefty annual budget of more than $6 billion, has prompted questions about the efficiency, value, and need for present and future missions.
Moving forward, what we think we should work together with the member states on is to make sure that UN peacekeeping operations, when they are warranted, will be fit for purpose. And when it's about enforcement, not peacekeeping, then it's not for UN peacekeeping to do enforcement, it's for other form of operation.
One hopeful moment came at the COP28 climate conference in Dubai. Delegates agreed for the first time on the need to move away from fossil fuels, a major driver of global warming. With climate change intensifying natural disasters, conflicts, and other global shocks, the UN has been called upon more to mobilize delivery of humanitarian assistance.
We see both things, right? We see that even when there's diminished political space to broker political solutions to conflicts or to human crises, there's still the real potential to do important, significant work on the humanitarian scale, but it has to be funded, it has to be supported in order to get the sort of greatest impact.
Over decades, many have called for reforms to the UN, including expanding Security Council representation to reflect current realities.
The UN was paralyzed for long periods of the Cold War. So the fact that it is once again going through a period of crisis doesn't mean that it's dead. I think there is a real need to think about the structures of the UN and how they could be changed.
The problem, the analysts say, is there is little consensus on how to change the organization for the better. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.